Welcome to Gameonysus Weekly, your one-stop shop for video game news, keeping up with the biggest stories so you don't have to. I'm your host, Edwin Garcia, and today we're talking about the Apple-Epic lawsuit finally coming to a close, a lot of studios undergoing work/employee changes, and the PlayStation showcase. All these stories and so much more on today's episode. Let's begin with the epic conclusion of the Apple-Epic lawsuit. And for this, I'm pulling from Rebecca Valentine over at IGN, who writes, Epic v. Apple, judge rules Apple must allow developers to direct app users to outside payment options. With the subhead, however, the court also rules that Apple is not considered a monopoly under antitrust law. The article reads, a judge has finally ruled in the Epic versus Apple lawsuit, most notably issuing an injunction in Epic's favor that forces Apple to permit developers on its platform to link to outside payment options within their apps. The injunction states that Apple is, quote, permanently restrained and enjoined from prohibiting developers from 1. Including in their apps and their metadata buttons, external links, or other calls to action that direct customers to purchasing mechanisms in addition to in-app purchasing, and 2. Communicating with customers through points of contact obtained voluntarily from customers through account registration within the app. This specific ruling favors Epic, which brought the suit to Apple, following Apple's removal of Fortnite from its App Store last year after Epic incorporated the ability to skirt Apple's payment system, thus avoiding Apple's 30% platform fees. However, this was the only point on which Epic won its case. The court's final order took issue with both parties' definitions of their relevant markets, saying that the market the two were fighting over was neither Apple's own internal system. However, this was the only point on which Epic won its case. The court's final order took issue with both parties' definitions of their relevant markets, saying that the market the two were fighting over was neither Apple's own internal systems, as Epic said, nor all of gaming, as Apple claimed, but rather digital mobile gaming transactions. Given that market, the court declared it cannot ultimately conclude that Apple is a monopolist under either federal or state antitrust laws. But nonetheless, the court stated that Apple's conduct was anti-competitive, hence the injunction. The court stated it believes the injunction will increase competition, increase transparency, increase consumer choice and information, while preserving Apple's iOS ecosystem, which has pro-competitive justifications. Apple did countersue Epic for breach of contract, and the judge ruled in favor of Apple on this point. The court has ordered Epic to pay out 30% of the $12,167,719 in revenue Epic collected from users in the Fortnite app on iOS through direct payment between August and October 2020, plus further damages. In total, Epic will pay Apple at least $3.6 million. This is doubtless not the end of the fight, as either party can still escalate the issue to a higher court if they are dissatisfied. Furthermore, this ruling comes in tandem with the proposed legislation that would solidify the ability for developers to use their own payment systems, as well as continued pushback from Apple from other directions on its restrictive walled garden. A similar ban on major platforms preventing developers from using outside payment was recently put into effect in South Korea. Apple and Epic have issued statements in response to the ruling. Apple's is as follows, as shared by business reporter Mark Gurman on Twitter. Today, the court has affirmed what we've known all along. The App Store is not in violation of antitrust law. As the court recognized, success is not illegal. Apple faces rigorous competition in every segment in which we do business, and we believe customers and developers choose us because our products and services are the best in the world. We remain committed to ensuring the App Store is a safe, trusted marketplace that supports a thriving developer community and more than 2.1 million US jobs, and where the rules apply equally to everyone. Tim Sweeney responded also on Twitter on behalf of Epic. Today's ruling isn't a win for developers or for customers. Epic is fighting for fair competition among in-app payment methods and app stores for 1 billion customers. Fortnite will return to the iOS App Store when and where Epic can offer in-payment in fair competition with Apple in payment, passing along the savings to consumers. Thanks to everyone who put so much time and effort into the battle over fair competition on digital platforms, and thanks especially to the court for managing a very complex case on a speedy timeline. We will fight on. Critically, Sweeney's statement points out that Epic and other developers still aren't free to put direct payment options to outside sources within their apps. They can only link to outside options for payment processing. This effectively means that a game could suggest you visit an external website to add money to an in-game account, but you'd still have to leave the app to do it rather than be able to just add money to a wallet within the app. So that was fairly complicated, I think, in a lot of ways. And following a lot of this court case stuff has been. I think Rebecca did a great job at breaking down all the information and kind of having it be concise, which is why I pulled from this article specifically. But yeah, I mean, I think this isn't the worst case scenario for Epic. Obviously, or I mean, obviously, but in these scenarios, I do lean on the developers, though, you know, I think Apple is in fact providing a great service as well. So while I can see both sides in that regard, I usually do favor developers, I think, a little bit more, though I guess you can argue in some ways that Apple's also a developer. Like it gets complicated, but I think that closing paragraph is really key, where being allowed to link out isn't, you know, one-to-one competitive and appealing, I guess, to a consumer. Because I know if I was someone that was like playing and I can link out and leave the app, or I can just pay within the app, I'm just going to pay within the app because it's easier. So that's kind of unfortunate. Hopefully that gets sort of changed up a little bit. I mean, I think that would be the, you know, best case scenario for Epic in this scenario, but I'm guessing that Apple's only going to do what they need to do in this regard. So we'll see if anything else comes out of this, you know, from the legal standpoint. And the drama continues as Tripwire boss steps down after heavily criticized Texas abortion law tweets. And for those who may need a refresher, Tripwire Interactive, they are the developers of The Killing Floor, Rising Storm 2 Vietnam franchises, the Shark PG, Maneater, and they are the publisher of Chivalry and Aspire 1 VR Operative. And before we jump into the story of this person actually stepping down, let's go to the tweet written by John Gibson, who tweeted out, "Proud of U.S. Supreme Court affirming the Texas law banning abortion for babies with a heartbeat. As an entertainer, I don't get political often. Yet, with so many vocal peers on the other side of the issue, I felt it was important to go on record as a pro-life game developer." So now let's jump to the article written by Wesleyan Poole over at Eurogamer, who will also be contextualizing the abortion law in case you missed that element of it, so we can kind of slowly put all these pieces together and get the full story here. The article reads, "The boss of Tripwire Interactive has stepped down as he said he was proud a draconian Texas anti-abortion law was allowed to stand." Then the tweet is quoted. The article continues with, "Texas' new anti-abortion law took effect last week after a nod from the U.S. Supreme Court. It allows anyone anywhere to sue anyone connected to an abortion in which cardiac activity was detected in the embryo, which can occur as early as 6 weeks into a pregnancy before most women even realize they are pregnant." Following Gibson's tweet, developers who worked with Tripwire distanced themselves from Gibson and the company. Atlanta, Georgia-based co-developer Shipwright Studios, which worked on Chivalry 2 and Maneater, canceled all its existing contracts with Tripwire. And Chivalry 2 developer Torn Banner Studios, based in Toronto, tweeted to reject Gibson's statement, with that tweet being, "We do not share the opinion expressed in a recent tweet by the president of Tripwire, publisher of Chivalry 2. This perspective is not shared by our team, nor is it reflected in the games we create. The statement stands in opposition to what we believe about women's rights." Going back to the article, some high-profile figures in the video game industry hit out at Gibson for his tweet too, including ex-Gears of War developer Cliff Bleszinski and current God of War director Cory Barlog. Now, Tripwire has issued a statement condemning Gibson's comments and confirming he had stepped down as CEO, with co-founder and current vice president Alan Wilson taking over in the interim. Here's the statement in full. "The comments given by John Gibson are of his own opinion and do not reflect those of Tripwire Interactive as a company. His comments disregarded the values of our whole team, our partners, and much of our broader community. Our leadership team at Tripwire are deeply sorry and are unified in our commitment to take swift action to foster a more positive environment." Effective immediately, John Gibson has stepped down as CEO of Tripwire. Co-founding member and current vice president Alan Wilson will take over as interim CEO. Alan has been with the company since its formation in 2005 and is an active lead in both the studio's business and developmental affairs. Alan will work with the rest of Tripwire leadership team to take steps with employees and partners to address their concerns, including executing a company-wide town hall meeting and promoting open dialogue with Tripwire leadership and all employees. His understanding of both the company's culture and the creative vision of our games will carry the team through this transition with full support from other Tripwire leaders. And John Gibson did issue a statement of his own, but I'm not really going to read that here, only because I don't think he says anything that's that relevant to the actual situation. Just sort of says, like, you know, thank you for your time. Like, it's meant a lot to me. Please, you know, put good vibes to the people that are still there. So there's not really anything of like specific substance that I think is worth pointing out here after skimming this. But I do want to point out, and I don't remember what his bio was before. I think it was, related to his role at Tripwire. His bio is now currently full-time philanthropist continuing helping the poor and underprivileged of the world, including orphans and widows. And then his profile picture is him like hugging someone. And then the header now, it used to be a picture of the Killing Floor, which is one of the games that Tripwire works on. But now it's like a picture of him like around a bunch of like him and like two other white people like helping out around a bunch of Black people. Like it's giving it's giving me Peace Corps energy. It's giving me white savior. Like I feel like this is one hell of a rebrand. And again, if you're watching the video version, you can actually see the account here. Yes, you would, from a quick glance, you wouldn't, like, I had to actually double check this was the right account. I'm like, is this the correct John Gibson? But yeah, this is the correct account. I am just sort of surprised by that. That doesn't really have anything to do with games. It's more of a general, choices were made. Choices were made here. And yeah. This seems like a very intentional shift. Anyway, bringing it back to everything at Tripwire, I mean, I think it is ultimately good that the step down happened, the change in leadership happened. It is one of those things where I know there will be people who might, I feel like most people not listening to the show don't have this take, but I think sometimes people would be like, oh, well, what does that have to do with his ability to like lead or whatever? But, again, I say this all the time, there really are certain things where just because it is under the blanket or under the umbrella of, being political, and capital P political too, where we're talking about not just concepts, but literal policies and laws, like things that you can vote on, things that you can push for, like things that are enacted upon by folks that we ask to represent us as people in the United States is what I mean by like capital P politics. Sometimes those things can be gray or can be like your own purview. When it comes to stuff like this, it really does boil down to women's rights and all of those aspects. And like, that's not up for debate. Like you're either for women's rights or you're not. And it's like, like there are certain things where it's like, yeah, sometimes it is clear, you know what I mean? Like, and the reaction overall was very negative because it was a horrible thing to say and bad things happened to this person as a result. So it's like, yeah, he fuck around and find out. And he did indeed fuck around and he found out. So we saw the whole scope happen in just a matter of days. We talked about folks stepping down. Let's talk about someone being appointed. For this, once again, we're going to Rebecca Valentine at IGN with the headline, Ubisoft employee group says CCO appointment leaves them with a quote, lack of confidence, with the subhead, appointments so far have left employee group with a lack of confidence in the future shape of the editorial team. The article reads, a group of current and former Ubisoft employees have responded to the company's appointment of a new chief creative officer, urging him and the company to provide a meaningful response to Ubisoft's culture of, quote, systematic discrimination, harassment, and bullying. The statement was issued by employee group A Better Ubisoft in response to the announcement today that Igor Monsieur would succeed Serge Ascoët as the company's chief creative officer. Following allegations, Ascoët had been a key propagator of toxic company culture. Monsieur, who has been with Ubisoft since 1998, has previously held several leadership roles in Ubisoft marketing, working on franchises such as Far Cry, Rainbow Six, and Splinter Cell. In 2014, he worked as creative director on Steep and followed up in the same role on Riders Republic. However, as the employee group points out, Monsieur's appointment does not appear to be in line with CEO Yves Guillemot's promise to overhaul the company's editorial team. As Guillemot wrote in a letter to employees upon Ascoët's departure, I will take on the CCO role temporarily as we work to define and organize the leadership of the editorial department. During this time, I will also personally oversee a complete overhaul of the way in which the team works. My goal is to create an inclusive and open culture, etc., etc. In its response, A Better Ubisoft points out that there is no clear expression of the creative process, and there is a shocking lack of diversity in the VPs. Currently, as it stands, the creative team at Ubisoft is composed of white people who are of uniform cultural backgrounds. And I think the story just really points out that it's not enough to remove, the toxicity that you do have at your company. You also have to, bring in that active diversity as well, which is not to necessarily imply that Monsieur wouldn't be, good in the role or isn't qualified or doesn't, is going to necessarily propagate that toxic culture necessarily. But I think, the group is sort of looking at this and saying, do you see how this is part of the problem, even if it's not necessarily intended to be? And I think it also, because it's like when you switch roles quickly and you have to just kind of appoint someone as interim, it's like, okay, do you notice how this very uniform structure you has just continues to feed into itself, and it sort of becomes almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of like a lack of diversity for the company. So, shout out to these employees putting in that work, really trying to push back and demand more. I think it is so easy, especially when you get tired of advocating for yourself, because that's exhausting. It's so easy to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to put this in the win column and then we're going to move on. But them really looking at it and being critical and pushing back and saying, no, you're gonna hear us out. You're gonna know what we want, and we're gonna continue to revoice our demands is really important and really powerful. And we have some workplace updates, starting with Dontnod now being permanently work from home. This comes over from Megan Farrokh-Ramesh over at Axios with the headline, Dontnod shifts to permanent work from home policy. And Dontnod is usually most known for Life is Strange, but they've also worked on other things such as Remember Me, Vampire, Captain Spirit, Twin Mirror, and most recently, Tell Me Why. The article reads, Dontnod will allow employees in its Paris and Montreal studios to decide if they'd like to work from the office or their homes. Why it matters. Embracing remote work reduces industry gatekeeping and grants workers more control over their careers. The shift to remote work for most companies was due to the pandemic, which closed offices worldwide. However, companies are beginning to adapt how they approach offices moving forward. Dontnod said the pandemic simply accelerated these plans, however, noting that the well-being of our employees is and has always been paramount, and remote work empowers all team members to work in the best possible conditions for them according to their lifestyles and ways of working. We know that everyone has different needs and different ways of functioning, and that is why we want to create a program that would give everyone the freedom to choose how they want to organize their day-to-day lives, said CEO Oscar Gilbert in a prepared statement. The big picture, the way developers are working is changing. Colleagues are now able to live and work anywhere in France with the Paris office or anywhere in Quebec with the Montreal office with the same conditions and benefits as any employee. Companies like Ubisoft have also revised their policy. The developer announced its shift to a hybrid model of office and remote work in June. And this is just really cool overall. I mean, I think the reality of things too is I feel like if you're not offering that setup, you are probably losing a bit of the employee market. I know a lot of employees, whether they're in games or just something else, where they're like, I'm at the point where I don't want to go into an office anymore. I don't want to go in to do my work anymore. I want to be able to work from home. And some folks are like, if they tell me to go back into the office, I am just going to find another job. And that's a very real reality for a lot of people. So yeah, ultimately, I think this is good. Obviously, if they can still get their work done and the projects are going fine and the employees are cool with it, and that's sort of what the desire is, it's always great to provide those options if possible. So yeah, this is, I would say, good news overall. And sticking with Axios for another work update, also from Megan Farrokh-Ramesh, a developer's 4-day work week. The article reads, Bugsnax developer Young Horses is permanently altering its work weeks to only 4 days in an effort to create a healthier work-life balance at its studio. Why it matters. The video game industry is known for intense crunch, but moving away from 40-hour work weeks is proof that model doesn't need to be the norm. The team of 8 switched to 4-day work weeks in July as part of a unanimously decided trial run, Young Horses co-founder and president Phil Tibetowski told Axios. The team's production schedule was already set to an expected 35 hours per week for each full-time person. Transitioning to 32 hours only meant a 3-hour loss. Might as well give people the peace of mind that they can relax doing their own thing on their own time than have someone feel guilty for doing it at work. We know what we have to get done and by when, or we're making our own schedule entirely and things get done when they get done. Yes, but the transition is easier due to the team size. It was easier for us to implement because to measure our team's output is simple relative to those bigger studios. So our trial period and decision making is faster than a studio who has to buy in from so many departments and investors. A studio goal has always been to foster a healthy, creatively fulfilling business that supports our lifestyles, Tibetowski said. Those lifestyles being ones where growth of the studio is not very important and sustainability of the happiness of the people who work here is much more our focus. Tibitowski told Axios that he believes a 4-day workweek is possible at larger studios, but you have to buy in from the top, and their goals/processes/expectations have to be adapted to support the change. There are people who will always want more, who are never satisfied with what they have, and who will sacrifice the well-being of their employees to get there. The bottom line, if we're all happier to be at work because we're well rested, I think we're going to be better off in the long run. This is such fantastic news for the studio. Congrats to them and their leadership sort of taking that initiative. And again, yes, they are smaller, so it is easier for them to do a lot of things, but they still had to go ahead and do it. There are plenty of small studios that don't have ideal setups and have their own problems too. So I think we still need to give them their props. I don't think it's, I do think it's important to point out, just as Megan does in her reporting, that, okay, yeah, this is easier because they're smaller, but here we go. This is the blueprint. This is the model. I'm here for it. There are so many studies that show that a 4-day work week is better, that is more productive, and people are happier with that than a 5-day work week. There's been such a need for an overhaul in the way we work in the world, just because it's been so long since we've had a workplace revolution in terms of hours and scheduling. Like, it was the factory workers that came before us that pushed for the 40-hour work week, and we haven't really made progress since then. And it's like, why are we still working on these hours? Like, so much of your time is spent working. And obviously you would think a place like Young Horses, a small team working on great games like Bug Snacks, they're probably like living a good life. Like, I think they like their work and get passion and joy from that work. But just because something's good doesn't mean that you can just like run yourself ragged on it. Like, it doesn't mean, I don't even have to put any energy in this because it's so much fun. Like, I think a lot of people have that perception of like these dream jobs, but the truth is, like, work is work and it's hard, and like you only have so much energy. So I think being smart about how you distribute that energy is so important. And like, I love that sort of second to last quote in this article of the people always wanting more, they're never satisfied, and they will sacrifice the well-being of their employees to get there. That is so true. And I love that phrasing too, where it's like, it's not even these like higher ups that making these sacrifices. They're not the ones grinding to hit deadlines. Like, it is the workers below them. It is often the people that get paid the least in this world that work some of the hardest jobs. And it's just ridiculous and unfair. And I love how fair and nice all of this seems. So I don't know. It's great to hear these stories. Obviously, it's important to cover the dark sides of the industry too, but it's nice to see, okay, well, like, if there are aspects of our work or of this work that is not working, there are problems with how development is done. Who are some studios doing it well, or that have more interesting models, or that have more dynamic models? And being able to look to Young Horses as one is really cool. And before we jump to the PlayStation Showcase recap, let's talk about how PlayStation bought Firesprite. This was discussed on the PlayStation blog, where head of PlayStation Studios Herman Holst writes, after a number of years of closely collaborating on several games together, including The Playroom for PS4, The Playroom VR, PSVR, I couldn't be more delighted to welcome Firesprite to the PlayStation Studios family as our 15th studio. Quite a few members of Firesprite come from SIE's studio Liverpool, and we're thrilled to welcome them back. And just for a refresher, let's take a look at some of the games that Firesprite has put out. Again, they have The Playroom, Run Sackboy Run, The Playroom VR, Air Force Special Ops Nightfall, The Persistence VR, The Persistence Enhanced, and Star Citizen Theaters of War, which is a working title still. I actually reviewed The Persistence on PSVR, which was like a trip because I am not really into roguelikes, shooters, or horror, and it's like all of those things but in space, and it was a challenging review to do and to take on, but I actually thought the game was like pretty solid. So I do feel like there's confidence in their ability to put out some solid products, and more importantly, I think them being VR focused, and The Persistence was such a like fully fledged out VR experience that ultimately I think this is good for PlayStation Studios. To me, it's not the number one most exciting acquisition. I personally have never like predicted it or necessarily wished for it, but I think it is a good get and kind of rounding out that portfolio. And now let's recap the PlayStation Showcase. For this, I'll be partially referring to the classic fanbite roundup of everything from today's PlayStation Showcase that Imran Khan always does, but I probably won't be pulling from it the same way I sometimes will just like read from it straight out, just because I've already watched the showcase and I feel pretty comfortable talking about the things that were shown off, but it'll be a thing to sort of lean on, help me find and scrub through the footage, that sort of thing, so it'll be linked in the show notes accordingly. Starting off pretty strong with Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake being revealed, is being developed by Aspyr. and it will be a PS5 console launch exclusive. And I personally have not played KOTOR, which is Knights of the Old Republic for short, but I know so many people that swear by that game as like one of their favorites, an absolute classic, one of the best Star Wars games ever. So I'm excited to be able to check it out in this, revamped context. Next, we saw a trailer for Project Eve, which seems to be this kind of action-oriented game, really like stylish looking in some ways, but also something a lot of people noted was it stars a woman protagonist, and she very much has like really intricate but very, very tight costuming. So it does kind of harken back to, I think, the way a lot of women game characters used to look. So a lot of people were like, this feels kind of dated to have this stylization now when it's not just Bayonetta. And then the other thing people pointed out was like, Project Eve, is this related to Parasite Eve? It doesn't seem to be, but that was kind of a weird moment as well. And on the PlayStation blog, it mentions combat in Eve is deliberate, including attack, defense, and evasion, while remaining fluid and zestful. The only way to survive is to grasp the attack patterns of various enemies and counter with precise timing. So definitely a lot of evading, dodging, parrying going on, as well as like mastering terrain by scaling walls, sliding tactically, swinging on ropes, and more. Then we got a gameplay trailer for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, which is like a Borderlands side game. It's fantasy-based. And the game description is, embark on an epic adventure full of whimsy, wonder, and high-powered weaponry. Roll your own multi-class hero, then shoot, loot, slash, and cast on a quest to stop the Dragon Lord. We then got a look at Forspoken, and the interesting part of this is it started in this, like, non-fantasy, kind of real modern-day life setting, and it's sort of implying the character is sort of thrown into this fantasy world and trying to figure out what's going on. And on the PlayStation blog, it details the following. Playing as Frey, who is the lead female character, you'll learn to harness newly discovered magical abilities to battle the terrifying monsters that inhabit the land. To have a chance of returning home, she'll also have to contend with the Tantas, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I don't know, destructive and twisted, all-powerful matriarchs who have dominion over Athea. And on the PlayStation blog, it also details things like the writers who are involved, which include Gary Whitta of Rogue One, a Star Wars Story, Amy Hennig of the Uncharted series, Alison Reimer, and Todd Stashwick. So definitely a lot of stacked talent. And personally, I think the traversal seemed fun. I feel like the abilities seem interesting. I'm pretty much just a sucker for like fun abilities integrated with like other aspects of gameplay. So we'll see how it turns out. It's pretty early footage. It sort of had mixed reception, at least on my Twitter timeline, of some people being like, oh, it doesn't like look that good, or elements look empty, or like the voice sync looks off. But these are still pretty early on, with Forspoken releasing on PS5 spring 2022, which I guess it's not that far away. So I don't know. We'll see how things might actually shape out once we get the game in our hands. But yeah, looking forward to this one overall. We got another trailer for Rainbow Six Extraction, which reminder that is going to be dropping January 2022. Not a lot to say on this one, as it's just not really my thing, so it's like, all right, Rainbow Six, I feel like a bit of a known quantity at this point. And recently announced by Remedy, we got the Alan Wake Remastered trailer, which has a release date of October 5th. And this is actually the first time that Alan Wake is going to be available on PS5. And this is actually the first time Alan Wake will be available on PlayStation. GTA 5 got a trailer. Man, PlayStation just loves showing you GTA 5. But essentially, they were hyping up the upcoming PlayStation 5 version of the game, which is now slated to come out March 2022. We saw some more Ghostwire Tokyo. Again, I think this game looks really cool and interesting. It's got this like dark, twisted styling to it. It's kind of spooky, but it still doesn't have a release date yet or a release window. Guardians of the Galaxy was once again shown off. And again, this game is coming out October 26th. I remember seeing it at Square Enix E3 showcase. I was not interested in it then. Still not interested, but maybe if it ends up everyone sets fire, I'd check it out. But that's kind of the only thing that would pull me into this one personally. Bloodhunt got a trailer, which is a vampire battle royale game. And of course, we had to see Deathloop just one last time before it comes out next week, so that got a trailer as well. And then this is kind of a strange one. Apparently, there's going to be a Radiohead sort of experience dropping that Epic is publishing. It's for Kid Amnesia. It's like a Kid A Amnesiac, like sort of the songs that maybe weren't released before or getting released. So it's called the Kid Amnesia exhibition presented by Radiohead and Epic. It's coming November, PS5. Don't know what else that means, but that's what's happening. Then there was this really cute game shown off for what I believe is the first time called Chia, but it's spelled Tchia. And it sort of has like this like almost clay-like cartoony look to it. You have like a raft, you have like a little glider, and essentially like one of the gameplay shticks is that you can inhabit animals and then use that for exploration. It just looks lovely. I'm really into this. And the description of the game on Steam reads as follows: a tropical open world adventure. Climb, glide, swim, and sail your boat around a beautiful archipelago. In this physics-driven sandbox, use Chia's special ability to take control of any animal or object you can find and jam on your fully playable ukulele, a game inspired by New Caledonia. There is an Uncharted remaster collection coming out called Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection, and this is going to be pairing Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy for PS5 and PC, and it's going to be dropping early next year. And going into PlayStation Studio stuff, we see Marvel, we see Insomniac Games, and then we're like slowly pulling into a bar and you see someone sitting at the bar and you're like, okay, is this like some antagonist or something? And you see these like hairy arms and these kind of almost bloodied knuckles. And then we see the blades come out and we know it's Wolverine. It's Marvel Wolverine made by Insomniac Games. Now at this point in the showcase, I was like, okay, cool. Wasn't expecting this. This is out of left field. Okay, you're not doing Spider-Man. You know, doing something different, you're zagging. I'm interested to see your take on this. Like, I think it's a pretty talented studio. Only for right after the Gran Turismo 7 trailer playing, we get another trailer where we see, what do we see? We see that suit. We see that Spider-Man suit. And then we see Miles' suit. And then it's like, okay, what's going on here? You know, this could just be DLC. I don't know what's going down. We see Spider-Man, we see Miles. We see them working together. We see Venom. And finally, we get the confirmation little title screen, Marvel Spider-Man 2, 2023. And to cap it off, God of War finally gets shown off as more than just the little logo. We even get the title. It's God of War, Ragnarok. Atreus is older now. He's got like a little bit of teen angst to himself. So we're going to see how that's going to play out. And while like I'm sure there's plenty for like lore hounds to kind of dig into, the main thing that stuck out to me was the little like dog sled situation going on. I was like, okay, yeah, all right, I see y'all. But I would say like combat and main gameplay wise, it kind of looks like a little bit more of the same. So I'll be interested to see what kind of, you know, unique takes this has to sort of differentiate itself from that first game. And this is supposed to be the end of this sort of saga, this pairing of God of War and God of War Ragnarok. Overall, I thought the showcase was, it was fine. It was solid. Like, I think its highs are really nice. I think Insomniac definitely carried the team on this one. Wolverine, that's cool. Spider-Man 2, that's cool. And it was nice to see, you know, something finally concrete from God of War. With, like, a shout out to Forspoken. You know, I'm interested in that game. And I do think KOTOR was a really nice reveal. But a lot of the showcase was just kind of middling. I feel like it really didn't pick up. Like, KOTOR was like a strong start. And when they started with KOTOR, I was like, oh, damn, they really have some crazy stuff to show us. And then it was just very dry for like the majority of the presentation. And then at the end, they were like Wolverine, Spider-Man 2, God of War. And, you know, I'm down for the end being like the high point and being like the PlayStation Studio time. But I was just really expecting more from this. So, yeah, I mean, it didn't really make me feel like, oh, okay. Now, like, PlayStation about to bring the heat. Like, we already knew about God of War. Again, the Insomniac stuff is probably the biggest appeal point because everything else was already pretty much known, except for, like, KOTOR. That was rumored, but, you know, that was never confirmed. Moving on to delays, and for this, I just want to highlight that the Analog Pocket was once again delayed, this time to December. This comes from Ana Diaz at Polygon. Though it is worth noting that the delay is December at the latest, so, you know, hopefully things go through all right at this point, but it has been a continual line of delays. And again, the Analog Pocket's like a nicer way to play like your old handheld cartridges. And for the shut up and take my money section, we are once again checking out Lego, which has this really cool Super Mario 64 question mark block kit. And essentially it's like the question block, but then at the top there's sort of like these components where you can kind of open it up and get these different areas from Super Mario 64, including like the castle and like the outside castle grounds, Bob-omb Battlefield, and I forget offhand, but like the little frozen area one of the frozen areas, because there's a couple different ones. Cool Mountain is what it is. It is listed in the description. And it just looks really cool, and it is so impressive, the little details that they can kind of weave together and have in these like pieces. They're just really elaborate setups, and it looks really cool. And I love the individual character pieces. Like they have a Lego Peach, and it's just like a pink block, and then like the face block, which is like her skin tone, like a yellow block, and there's like a yellow block on the back, and they have like like a really minimalistic Mario one as well, and they have some of the enemies, like the bullies and all that. Like, it's just a good Lego set. But of course, it is a bit pricey, running $169.99, and it will be available October 1st, consisting of 2,064 pieces. And those are all the stories we have for this week. Thank you so much for watching over on youtube.com/Gameonysus. Be sure to like, subscribe, and tap the bell. And for listening on podcast services, be sure to leave a review if possible and subscribe on your platform of choice because it helps the show a whole lot. And as always, a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. You too can join at patreon.com/Gameonysus with rewards as low as the $1 tier all the way up to the $25 tier. And as always, I will see y'all here next time. Bye.